us to the subject of most iconic sports photos of all time, just within the last couple of months. But we did get into that conversation. And I offered up my nomination. It's the famous shot of Muhammad Ali presiding over the top of a prone, flat on his back, Sonny Liston. A remarkable photo. But there was another one that was immediately nominated by several members of the Bumper to Bumper listening community. And it's the Sports Illustrated cover shot in 1980 of the United States Miracle on Ice Olympic victory. And it gives you chills. It's one of those photos that you never forget if you've seen it. In fact, our guy, Neil Broughton, is in the foreground of that shot. His back is to the camera as he's heading towards the celebration around the boards behind the goaltender. And the guy responsible for that particular photo has passed away. Heinz Klutmeyer died on January 14 at the age of 82 years old due to complications with Parkinson's disease and a stroke. And it's one of the sad realities about being a great photographer in this country. A lot of times people don't remember who the hell you are. I mean, they'll put the little tag there. They'll credit you.
Get the credit.
Your photo. But a lot of people don't pay. The average Rube's not going to pay that much attention to that. Now, the average Rube doesn't even pay that much attention to byline stories, the names that are on there. Columns, maybe a little bit more. But photographers, I think, are even more anonymous to that extent. And it's a shame because great photojournalism is so important, so crucial, so vivid, and so outstanding at telling the story, whatever the story might be. And, you know, the cliche, a picture's worth 1,000 words, is 100% true. There are many photos that fall into that classification, some of them tragic, some of them celebratory. That was a celebratory one, and many, many others. And I learned a little bit more about the Klutmeyer career via SI.com. He was born in Berlin, spent his early years in Bremen, moved to the United States of America at the age of 9, Midwestern influence, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He apparently attended a high school named for George Custer. Spoke 2 languages. He was also captain of the school's tennis team, a varsity swimmer. At the age of 15 years old, he's on the sidelines at Green Bay Packers games, taking pictures. 1960, he shot the presidential campaign that year, found ways to get into convention halls to do. He's still a teenager at this point, is Heinz Klutmeyer. Heinz, I should say. I keep saying Heinz Klutmeyer. So from there, I mean, he took shots of Vince Lombardi, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. He goes to Dartmouth as an engineering major, though, largely because his dad wanted him to. The idea was, okay, you can do the photography stuff too, but you got to do something else. He graduates from Dartmouth in 1965. He spends 2 years working with Inland Steel. But photography was in his brain, man. It was in his heart. He freelances for the Associated Press, joins the staff of the Milwaukee Journal. He finds a way to convince the folks at Time Inc. to get him the opportunity to take pictures for Life magazine. The kids don't know about that magazine. Very popular one back in the day. Kind of a pop culture, general interest kind of magazine. And, of course, Sports Illustrated. He returns to Germany in 1972 to shoot one of the most memorable, historic Summer Olympics of all time, the Munich Olympics. I can remember those like yesterday. I spent, I've been 17 then, I guess. I spent that entire Olympics riveted to the TV. No flat screens then, but picture tube TV. An endless array of remarkable athletic achievements. And then, of course, tragedy. In fact, according to SI, he was eating with world-class Olympic swimmer Mark Spitz during the terrorist attack. And he ultimately, of course, chronicled that tragedy, too. And it sort of went on from there. We mentioned the Miracle on Ice in Lake Placid. And the list pretty much goes on and on and on. He apparently, in the 2008 Beijing Olympics, his image confirmed that Michael Phelps won the 100-meter butterfly by 0.01 seconds. In Barcelona, he became the first photographer to place a camera underwater to capture an Olympic swimming event, that event. The best photographers, Guardsy, I think we will say, they are artists because they have some innate sense of the composition of the photo, a la as if they were at an easel painting something. Some of it's natural, maybe some of it's hard work, some of it's trial and error, figuring it out. But this is one of those guys who is worth owning, he's worth celebrating, even if many of us can't remember his name. Chances are, if you're a sports fan, you reveled in and enjoyed at least one of the magnificent photos he took, covering literally the wide, wide world of sports.
The pride that photographers take in their work is probably second to none.
No question. Heinz Klutmeyer has passed away at the age of 82 years old. Glad to ode him, unfortunately, not under circumstances that we would like to do so, but important that we indeed do. It's very rare on this program over the decades to have prepared a specific bumper-to-bumper seal of approval and to decide to change it at the last minute for timeliness, because I believe the original seal of approval can hold for a day or two, perhaps even longer. This one, late breaking, is too juicy to pass up on. So
it's the bumper-to-bumper seal of approval.
We send it the way of, the love we lost, let's be honest. This show I'm talking about. We send it to A.J. Pierzynski.
Oh.
Who you've tried diligently
yeah.
for about the last 5 years.
Yeah.
To just get back on our show once. He used to be a regular on this show.
He was on a lot.
And we can't get him. He taunts us with it via Twitter from time to time.
He's a tease.
But he's never, for whatever reason, even when he's been in town, even when we had our last playoff run, for some reason, he ignored the requests from either of us. But I'm going to rise above that today and issue to him the bumper-to-bumper seal of approval. This is via, as Common would say, a Tiny Joe Nelson piece at SI.com. And apparently, how do I put it here? AJ was on Foul Territory.
That's his show.
Oh, that is AJ's show. Okay, his own show.
And I think this is when Gleeman was a guest.
Really?
I saw Gleeman tweet about this today, or I saw the clip of it today.
Okay. So, here are the quotes. This is from today. While talking about the Twins on Foul Territory, AJ asks this question. Why Well, he to your point, he apparently is begging our guy Gleeman for answers on why the poll ads are not increasing payroll. Quote, is it because of the imminent sale of the team? Is that why? Because the poll ads have plenty of money. Poll ads have all the money in the world. They're not tight on money. They've had larger payrolls before. Don't use the TV deal because I'm tired of hearing of the TV deal, AJ said. What's the reason behind them not spending? I do not understand. Most people in this market now know that we decreased payroll after our triumphant return to the postseason in 2023 by about $30 million for the 2024 season. And they've pretty much made it clear they ain't going to be adding any payroll. And my guess is they're going to end up even slashing it more. I'm not sure I agree with AJ on this part, but I get his point. He goes on to say, Derek Falvey, I feel bad for him. He's out there. He puts a team in the field that wins their first postseason series in 20 years, and then they're like, oh, you got to cut payroll. Fans are going crazy. Then they look at the division. And they say, no one else in our division is really doing anything. We could win it again in 25. Oh, but we haven't signed not a bunch, a major league free agent this offseason. Why? After Gleeman provided his answer about the Twins not spending, Pierzynski expressed frustration that dates all the way back to his time playing for the Twins, noting that he still, quote, actually cares about the Twins, unquote, because he loves some of the people working behind the scenes. Is this the 1998 to 2003 Twins we're talking about here? Because this sounds awfully familiar when I was playing for the Twins. Oh, we got to cut payroll, and then we get a new stadium, and we can have all the payroll we want, except now we got to cut it again. A passionate Pierzynski went on to say. Let's do it again.
It's the Bumper to Bumper Seal of Approval.
I can't imagine. Well, this might be recency bias, but I think I'm going to stick with it. I cannot imagine a less anticipated offseason in Minnesota Twins recent baseball history, right? Because there is no feeling by any baseball people that they're going to be interested in anybody. Now, eventually they might do something via trade, I guess, but there's a million names out there. We're not linked to any of them. It's this a feeling that we're all in the team and the poll ads are in this limbo period until they can figure out whether they can find a suitable owner. And I haven't really heard much about that lately, and I don't know if that was covered in this particular podcast or not. But there's nothing. There's a nothingness. It's an utter void, right? There's no anticipation. There's no, I wonder what they might do here. I honestly think most people just flat out don't care, and they shouldn't. The Twins don't deserve any sort of, what's the word here, grace through this entire thing. They can do it the way they want to do it. We said this before. It's their ball club. But there's no reason then for you to give literally a second's thought to any potential moves, or do they want to go this direction or they want to go that direction? Why would anybody possibly care at this point? The next move that you should care about is the announcement that they have found an owner and there's new people coming in to run this team.
So is this a good time or a bad time to tell you that 1 week from today, Rocco Baldelli is scheduled to join you in studio for his
He's back again?
He's back.
Well,
3:30 a week from today.
Well, here's what's interesting. No, it's a good time, I guess, because we had such a good conversation with Rocco a year ago. Here's the thing that'll be interesting as well when he's back. He's stuck.
He is stuck. He's in a tough spot.
He's he's got to be the politician to a degree.
Yep, and he's good at that.
But that doesn't mean I'm not going to try to get him going.
Oh, of course. I think he knows.
In fact, to a large extent, I will be stroking his ego with the notion that, well, Rocco, you got no chance. That's the approach I'm going to take. If I can maybe gain some points that way where he goes, you know what, Dan, you're right. This is ridiculous. What are we doing? Why am I here?
Right.
If we can't make any moves. I don't know that the odds are good.
No.
But it's worth trying again.
Yeah. What do you guys want me to do in the bullpen?
That's
What do you want me to do? Let this starter go 6?
That is exactly it.
So, yeah, the Llama's coming back a week from today, the 22nd.
That's great.
3:30 to 4:30.
Well,
It was one of my favorite
fun.
hours
it was
a year
good
ago.
hour.
It was great.
It went very, very well. Did you see, by the way, the Kevin Kernan cheap shots, Twins related? He's got, like, off season, he does stories, columns on every team.
I saw that circulated in the Twitterverse. I haven't read it.
He took us to the woodshed a few days ago, and then I think because that was still in the front of his mind, and as he's watching the Vikings get killed, he basically says, no different than the Twins collapsing late in the season. The Vikings sure have collapsed last game of the regular season, the first game of the postseason.
Man.
As well.
A Kernan stray.
Truth cannot be controversial. Is Luigi next?
He is next.
Lou Nanne to talk plenty of puck. Wild back in action. They're in town. Both our local professional sports teams, winter teams, are in town tonight. We'll get an update from him on puck. And don't forget, Kessler will be in studio at about 5.
Well, she sneaks around the world from India to Carolina. She's a sticky-fingered filcher from Berlin down to Belize. She'll take you for a ride on a slow boat to China. Tell me where in the world is
Lou Nanne.
He is not in studio, but thanks to our good friends at Kemp's, he now joins us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. I'm guessing you've got a few degrees where you are on us, especially if you are down Florida way.
Yeah, but it was a little cool today. It's probably about 66.
66,
2 days ago it was
you
nice,
say?
83, but today and tomorrow are going to be a little cool again.
I think Guardsy, what are we up to today? I actually think
we're surging.
We're surging. The problem is it's not supposed to last. I think the high Saturday or Sunday is supposed to be below zero. I think we're supposed to be like a high of -2 or -4 temperature on Saturday. So
the high on Monday is 5 below.
Oh, Monday's even worse.
Yes.
Okay, -5. So that's an extended cold snap apparently that's coming. If you want to come back for it, Luigi.
Well, look at the bright side. You don't have to go to a dermatologist because you're not going to get sunburned or anything.
That's very, very true.
You might need some like chapstick or Vaseline.
Vaseline all over the face. There's no question about that. It's good to have you back. By the way, if you have questions for Louie, hit the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. That number is 64686. Before we get to Puck Talk, I was talking earlier with your buddy, Glenn Mason, about how cruel, I guess you could say, in this case I was talking about football, but any game could be, that even if you have a highly distinguished season like the Vikings were enjoying, right? You're sitting at 14-2 going into that last regular season game, and then you lose that in Detroit, you lose your chance at home field, and then you lose your only playoff game, and you're not particularly competitive in either. It can turn. I guess it's the lesson again that we know, but is worth reminding folks how quickly it can turn. Right? How quickly it can go from we're throwing Sam Darnold in the air in the locker room after beating the Packers to it's over. It's just like that. It's done.
I would have lost a lot of money. I would have lost a lot of money in the last game. I even was fairly confident they were going to beat the Lions, but I was very confident that they were going to beat the Rams. And even when the touchdown got called back, I thought that was still a glimmer of hope, giving them confidence. And I was telling my wife, "Relax, this is not a problem."
Thank God you're not a betting man.
It's unfortunate what could happen in a game like that. And when you talk about Sam Darnold, that's worse than going to a casino and putting everything on a blackjack card, and there's no chance you're going to win. He lost easily $100 million in those last 2 weeks, I think.
It's remarkable, how quickly it went from on the ESPN studio crews basically saying you can't possibly do anything but bring him back, because if you don't bring him back, he's going to get the kind of contract you mentioned. Well, it's interesting to now, is he going to be a backup quarterback somewhere? It's interesting because I asked Mace flat out. I said, all right, based on how it ended with him, would you recommend that the Vikings bring him back? And he said yes. Now, I didn't get into the particulars because to me, if it's a yes, you got it. The fine print is at what price, right? That has to be part of the equation, and that price has to be incredibly more reasonable. But a lot of people now, Louis, it was a good run. We appreciate the work you did. Your career, there's got to be probably a team or two that's at least going to look at you because there aren't that many other good quarterback options. But the betting money now is don't even think about franchising him. Just start the clock on the original plan, which was for McCarthy to be the guy, and then you bring maybe Daniel Jones in as your backup. Or maybe even the starter at the beginning of the season, and then you sort of ease into JJ. So how do you, as a former GM, how do you go about not overreacting to recency, but not underreacting too? I mean, it's an interesting question. After just a breakthrough season, the guy's numbers were astounding, right, for almost all of the season.
Well, if I'm the general manager of the Vikings, I'm going to my coach because I really trust O'Connell, and I think that we haven't been able to see how Jones has performed, and certainly haven't been able to see that with the Viking team on the field in any games. But he's watching them every day in practice, and undoubtedly the judgment is going to be made, I would think, by him. And if I was the general manager, it'd be by him alone, because I trust that guy enough to say either Jones could do what Darnold has done this year when he was good, or Jones can't. And if he can't, they got to bring Darnold back. And I would expect he's going to be in the $20-25 million range, no matter where he goes.
Right.
And the franchise the Vikings don't have to franchise him. They'll say, look, we're not going to franchise you, but we want you back at this price. So I'm confident enough that O'Connell's going to make the right decision between those two. And we still have to remember that other teams are looking at all this and have an idea about Jones and have an idea about Darnold, and they're both free agents. So there's going to probably be some competition for both of them.
True.
And I expect that O'Connell's going to make the call, and the one that he wants will stay with the Vikings and play.
Yeah,
to help McCarthy coming along.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's probably as good a way. And as you mentioned, he's going to be the guy you lean on, right? That's his deal, is working with quarterbacks and offense, and to a large extent, I think, you may defer. I, like you, don't think the number is going to be anywhere near what it was supposed to be, or felt like it was going to be just a few weeks ago. But then sometimes it only takes one team, I guess, to do something silly. So I'm very curious to see how that'll play out, because we were talking with a couple people yesterday about the fact that how much rope do you give Darnold for the fact, as bad as it was the last 2 weeks, for the fact that this was, even though he's 27, this was his first postseason activity. Like, if he's 24 and the first time around he struggles like this, generally the consensus is, well, that's troubling, but it's a different. The competition's different, the emotions are different, it's tougher. You got to give a younger player a chance to sort of understand what the playoffs are like, and he can learn from those mistakes if you think he's got the skill to do it. So I don't know if it's fair to take the same approach with Darnold, even though, he's 27. This literally was his first playoff game, and even the Lions game, you say, was a quasi-playoff game. He'd never played in any games that had as much significance. Well, and when you look at it, you say, what's going to be the determining factor? And that's going to be whether O'Connell figures he can get Darnold to release that ball a second quicker. And I really enjoyed watching Aikman talk about Darnold not getting it away quick enough, and he should have done this and that, and even picking up the receivers who he should have quicker. He, as the game went on, he was like a scared rabbit. You're really feeling everything closing on you quicker than it is. And I just think that O'Connell's going to be able to judge whether he thinks that Darnold can really learn to release that ball quicker. And if he does, that would have been the key. It's not that
it's not that he would have been able to complete any of those passes, but of 9 sacks, you got to figure that at least 5 of them, 6 of them, he had a chance to get that ball away. Just throw it away. And had he done that, it could have been a big difference in the game.
Which is exactly what Stafford did. Stafford had some incompletions that weren't really close to being complete, where he's saying, I'm going to get rid of the ball. So and live for the next down. So in the next down, instead of 2nd and 17, it's still 2nd and 10. Not great, but a lot better than 2nd and 17. And that's what, obviously, you got to learn in that position. I mentioned earlier in the show, it cracked me up. Sometime during the game, Tommy Kramer, the former Vikings quarterback, tweeted out, "You have 2.5 seconds," which I thought was kind of amusing coming from him. I think he too was frustrated about, how long you're holding on to the ball. And I think the line didn't help him. I think also he needed he needed more routes available to him, the so-called hot routes. But, as you say, there was a scared rabbit feel to it as the game went on, and he didn't even look confident scrambling for yardage, because during the year, that's something he had done really well, right? Better than I thought. He had a little more mobility where, take 6 yards, and get out of bounds, whatever the case may be. 2nd and 4 is a lot better than 2nd and 18.
Yeah, I thought that he could have run more himself, and he did have one that was, pretty good.
Yeah.
And I just think that maybe they should have even planned for that, for some runs, just to loosen up the defense a bit. But I thought he was going to take off and run a few more times. And, as you said, the first time on that stage and that kind of pressure, and you've had such an outstanding season. It's tough to see it go right down the drain that way, but now is the time for real judgment. Now, this is going to be a big time for the Vikings to make that assessment. But at the same time, as much as we talk about him and talk about Jones, all you got to do is look at Daniels for Washington, and he's a rookie in the way he plays. You got to hope that McCarthy could come and do the same thing.
Yeah, you're right.
Because we've had a couple rookies, Stroud, a couple of these guys come in and play
well from the beginning.
Exceedingly well, and so rather than get all upset over the quarterbacks that we have playing, rather than the one we have hoped for that was drafted and wasn't able to play. I mean, I look at Daniels and I watch that game against Tampa. The kid looks like he's been around 10 years.
No, it's remarkable. It really is. He is fun to watch. His accuracy, his cool, is stunning. Let's talk some hockey, Louis. Your Wild Club back in action tonight against Edmonton. Kaprizov is out. Faber is out. Gus Bus is going to be in the net. The injuries continue. And I got a text to that point that came in earlier. This is from KFAN Girl, and she writes, does Louis have any thoughts or opinions on why the Wild have sustained so many injuries this season and last? Is that just the way it goes in the National Hockey League in 2023 or 24, 25? Or is there something else that can explain it?
No, I'll tell you, you have to look around the league. There's instances like the Wild have had, and I don't think anybody's been as bad as the Wild, but there's a number of teams that have had significant injuries to good players, but not as many. And then there's teams like, I was looking at Boston, and until just this week, where they got 2 guys, well, one guy with a concussion was out, and after the game last night, I'm sure there's going to be another one out. They hadn't sustained any. And it reminds me of our team in '88 when Herb was coaching. We had like over 500 man games missed in 1 year. We never went near half of that any time. I couldn't believe it. It was happening that bad. But yet, when I look at it, through all of this, and I can't believe that it's going to continue, because this is just, a disaster for the kind of players that are getting hurt.
Yes.
Not just players hurt, but your star players hurt. But yet the Wild sit there. They got 44 games played and 58 points, which means with 38 games they got left in the year, if they just play 500, they're going to be in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. There's 17 teams right now that are playing 500 or better. So I'm not concerned about the playoffs. I'm concerned about them getting together as a team long enough to get their rhythm going for the playoffs. And I'm, as I said before, until I see Kaprizov on the ice, I'm still.
I understand.
That's something that's just scaring me, because it's 9 games for him now, and he's got a groin, and I don't know that I can remember guys out that long with a groin. I can remember guys out longer than that with hernias.
Sure.
But not with a groin, and that's what's concerning me.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. What are the chances tonight to take care of business, given the people that the team has out?
Well, it's going to have to be the goaltender, because that the team coming in here, the ability that you got McDavid, Draisaitl, 2 of the 5 best players in the league, on one line, and you've got a team that's got some good balance, but the Wild, for some reason or other, that's one of the teams the Wild have played consistently good against. Even when they were hurt, even they're playing in Edmonton or at home, they've always had a good record against them. I hope it continues, because Edmonton has been giving up some goals along the way, and they're a team that for some reason, although it could end in a hurry because McDavid is so good, but they're a team that doesn't seem to play their best against the Wild for the most time. You go back and check their record, and I'm telling you that the Wild have just had real good games with them, and always seem to come out on the right side of it for the most part. They've had a couple of losses, but not nearly as much as they would against a team of that quality, you'd think.
So much greater margin for error this year is vital compared to a year ago. You're 100% right. But as you say, the nagging concern is I want us to get in that with the right people healthy again, in the right frame of mind heading into the playoffs, right? That's the point. So that's the goal the rest of the way, right? You're in. We can talk about positioning and so forth, but more than anything, it's get healthy enough, get right, and get into that collective groove you'd like to think is important to give yourself the best chance to finally break through in the postseason.
Right, and that's what you have to do. And fortunately for the Wild, a number of their players that have been able to play along the way, like leading the way is Rossi.
Yep.
They've played well. And Foligno, you know what you're going to get game in and game out. You can go to a number of those guys. But what I was really happy about is Guerin picking up 2 defensemen, and like Jurek and Dermott that he got from Edmonton, gives them a little depth back there when they definitely needed it, because they didn't have it. They didn't have it there ready to play in Iowa before that. So at least they got a chance to continue to be pretty solid defensively in their own zone. And Gustafsson, he's had a couple of bad games, but he's had so many good ones. In the last game, even though he got beat, he was outstanding. I mean, he had so many shots, and he finally loses. I think it was, if I remember, it was 4-1, but he kept them in there forever, and that's what he's got to do again tonight. So I think that, it seems like the Wild are getting closer to being healthy.
Yeah.
The only thing I would like to see, and I'm really surprised that they've got no production of the fourth line, and I mean 0 production. They're, when you got fourth line guys playing every game and playing 9 to 11 minutes a game, because Tinoff is playing a little more because he kills penalties, but when you look at the total points that the fourth line has got, that's what hurts, because you'd like to get a goal or so every 4 games from them, but they're not getting it.
January 15, so today in 1968, Bill Masterson passes away, first North Star, of course, scored the first goal in franchise history. We've talked about this story over the years. One quote got my attention. Dan Minnesota linked a piece that John Gilbert wrote on that occasion out of the Minneapolis Tribune. I want to get your specific reaction to. Gilbert writes, the area in front of either goal where it is the job of the defenseman to keep opposing forwards off balance is where most of the heavy checking takes place. That is accepted in the NHL as part of the game, just like not wearing helmets. The fact that only Andre Boudreas of the North Stars wears a helmet was explained by coach general manager Ren Blair. Quote, when a player signs a pro contract, off comes his helmet, Blair said. Fans like to recognize the players, and they can't when they're wearing helmets. Plus, I feel a player plays 10 to 15% below his full potential when he wears a helmet, too. Now, in fairness, that's a long time ago, right? 1968. But talk to us about that and what you remember about that tragedy.
Well, I will tell you this, that Blair hated helmets. He hated helmets. And what I remember about the tragedy is Bill Masterton wore a helmet in college. He came from Western Canada, didn't have to wear a helmet, but in college you had to. And when he played in the USHL after he was working, wasn't playing pro, he was playing for St. Paul. I played against him. I was in Rochester. He wore a helmet all the way through, so he never took a helmet off. You know, like I did, but some of the other guys did. He didn't. He continued to wear it. That's why I was surprised when he signed with the North Stars, 68, to go into pro. He took the helmet off, and it's just because of what Ren says. I'm sure. I'm really sure that Bill, in his mind, we all knew how Ren felt about helmets. In fact, after Bill got killed and hitting his head in the ice, and Dave Ballon put a helmet on, and Ren went off on him in the locker room one night because he wasn't playing well, and he said, "Ooh, would your wife tell you to wear the helmet?" You know,
man. Yeah.
There was that feeling in the league at the time.
Sure.
Not to have, there weren't many helmets. Boudreaux had one, Charlie Burns had one, and there weren't probably 5 helmets in the league that I can recall.
Wow.
And I just think that had he had that helmet on, you know, he got sandwiched in the check, and it went back into his head, and I think he'd probably still be living. And I know I didn't see it because I was playing with the Olympic team that night in Boston.
That. Yep.
And so I didn't get to see it, but I heard about the check, and I I know those kind of things happen. It wasn't intentional, but he just got scissored and went flying back, and I just remember how everybody felt around the locker room, what they were like that next day when I got to see him in Boston. And I'll never forget it, and I'll never, be convinced that had it not been for that attitude, Bill would have still been wearing that helmet.
Oh, man, it's scary to think about even all these years later. Was it clear, you mentioned you weren't there, which I think you've told us before, but the people who were, the people you talked to, could they tell immediately that this was something really, really serious or not so much? Because sometimes you don't realize it until later. Like you said, players go down, they hit their head on the ice. What do you remember hearing from people in terms of how quickly they seem to wear that, this is not just another hit, this could be bad?
I have to tell you, most of the guys thought they knew it was a bad hit, but most of them thought that he was going to be okay when they took him off. But apparently, after when they finally got him to the hospital, that he was essentially brain dead,
right.
And the people didn't realize it at the time. Everybody was aware that it was a serious injury, a hard hit. But when it's never happened,
right.
I have to think that you don't think it's going to happen. Even when you see it, you don't believe that that's going to be the result. I had a helmet, like I put mine on after a couple of concussions about 5 years into my career. And in my last year, I remember getting hit where, as I told you in Pittsburgh, I hit my head in the ice, and I had a helmet on, and I had 7 stitches in the head, and I had a concussion where I was getting up and getting down, and I finally passed out. They carried me off, but I had a helmet on, so I can imagine. What I can believe is it hasn't happened more often, especially when there was no helmet.
Right,
at that time.
That's a great point.
How it didn't happen more often, that I can't understand that, because we've seen so many hits and so many times guys go down and and hit their head in the ice. Now at least you have helmets that give them some support.
Good history lesson, tragic story on this date, but worthy of our discussion for sure. Good stuff as always. We hope to see you eventually, but we will talk to you next week.
Okay, my friend. Nice to talk to you.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Luigi. That is Lou Nanne, brought to you by our good friends at Kemp's. Kessler will be in studio beginning at about 5:30 tonight. There's obviously a lot to get to regarding the madness at the state capitol. There is some breaking hostage news that will be a big part of our discussion today as well, but that's about 30 minutes from now. Guardsy's back and I think in position to give us top 5 at 5 information. I'm sure he'll help us preview the Wild tonight as Louis did. The Timberwolves also at home tonight. Maybe some leftover Vikings talking points and much more when we return.